Hello, welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. Today I would like to discuss with you the novel South of Broad by Pat Conroy. Pat Conroy is an author who has dazzled me with the gift of his prose in the past. The Prince of Tides was a revelation. Like other Conroy novels such as The Great Santini and The Lords of Discipline, The Prince of Tides was adapted into a pretty good movie. With all this in mind, I dove into South of Broad, prepared to be floored, but this was not to be. Although the lushness of Conroy's prose when describing his beloved South Carolina continues to be on full display in South of Broad, and various other setting elements are carried over from his previous writings as well, I did not find myself to be nearly as invested in the characters who populate this book as I was in those brought to life in The Prince of Tides and other Conroy novels. Rather than feeling I was getting to know new people intimately, which is what you hope to experience when reading a novel, it seemed to me that Mr. Conroy merely presented a lineup of caricatures this time out. Each of them was a specific type who spoke and acted according to predetermined dictates. The South of Broad is full of melodramatic events, and this sentence may be the greatest understatement that I've ever made. Pretty much every tragedy other than the Holocaust happens to the characters in South of Broad. Incestuous rape, abandoned orphans, stalking by psycho killer, flaunting of extramarital affairs in faces of spouses, suicide, AIDS, being caught in a hurricane, victim of pedophile, priest, you name it, this book has it. And I'd be happy to consider all of this a plausible series of events among a small group of friends, so long as I did not feel that the majority of them were cardboard cutouts rather than real people. Pat Conroy appears to be going through the motions when it comes to developing these characters, strictly interested in putting them through the roller coaster pace of his plot, while paying homage to the beauty of Charleston every few pages. There is a gay male character who perhaps literally is not given a single line of dialogue that is not sexual in nature. We get it, he's gay. Gay people talk about more than just the fact that they're gay, you know. The movie star is a self-involved diva from beginning to end, always performing for her friends and for Conroy's readers, rather than simply being a human being from time to time. The snob is a snob in all he says and does. How he doesn't manage to permanently alienate himself from a group of people he considers himself to be far superior to is beyond me. Why he continues hanging out with people he barely finds worthy to wash his car is beyond me. Pat Conroy determined that they will remain each other's lives for the sake of his book's storyline, and so they do. The African-American characters are noble and overachieving from beginning to end. No flaws evident, other than an inability to tell the snob to go screw himself when he says something racist. One of the orphans becomes an upstanding citizen. The other goes crazy for no particular reason to be gleaned other than that at least 50% of those with screwed up childhoods surely will go on to become screwed up adults. The protagonist, Toad, is the one character with some nuance. He is remarkably unemotional and reacts to pretty much everything with a flip comment. His specialty is always having a joke at the ready, delivered with a straight face. His father is a saint, his mother a bitch, except for when she's being a nun. And Toad somehow ends up as a gossip columnist who every now and then reacts to tragedy by being admitted to a mental institution when he can't come up with a punchline. We see these characters at 2 points in their lives, when Toad and his friends are in high school, and then years later when they go on a rescue mission on behalf of one of them to San Francisco for a couple of weeks, and then return to the greatest place on earth, South Carolina. Pat Conroy makes it abundantly clear that while the South has its excessive bigotry and rigid class distinctions separating blue bloods from the riffraff, it's also really, really pretty. In between these 2 points of time, members of the South of Broadcast have married off in pairs, sort of like the TV show Friends. Poor Toad gets the crazy one because it's his lot in life to catch bad breaks. He also lusts after the one who married the snob for no better reason than that it's her destiny to be Mrs. Snob. I found far too much reader manipulation in this novel for my taste. Soap opera, telenovela level writing, rather than masterpiece theater, which is what I come to expect from Pat Conroy books. Perhaps if I did not come in as such a big fan of The Prince of Tides, I would have given it more leeway. I may have cut a little more slack if reading a book by someone I'd never heard of before. But regardless of how I feel about an author's previous work, in the instances when I've read them, I can still recognize heavy-handedness when I see it. I'm able to notice when an author is taking shortcuts to draw emotion rather than carefully building tension. I can spot borderline absurd dialogue in place of what feels more natural for people to say. I'm capable of detecting paper-thin character development when it's evident. All of these flaws were discovered in South of Broad. Pat Conroy's sheer talent at constructing sentences got me to keep on pushing through to the end, though. The novel's final 50 pages are the strongest of the book. I think this is because Conroy was just about done with his plot machinations, just a twist or 2 or 3 left. So most of the characters are dispensed with, sent to the backdrop of Toad's life, allowing the reader to spend a little one-on-one time with him. When Toad doesn't have anyone around to make inappropriate wisecracks to, we get an extended peek at his inner thoughts, and he finally starts to become interesting just in time for the book to end. Pat Conroy is an enormous talent, but South of Broad is one of his off days, in my humble opinion. This is probably the harshest review I have ever written or spoken of a novel that I've read, primarily because I came into it being such a huge fan of Pat Conroy's writing, knowing how talented he is, and therefore ended up being greatly disappointed at what a cop-out this book turned out to be. It's not the first book that I've ever read by an author where I've been a fan of him or her from their earlier works, and then when I read one of the books later on in the career, I found it to be not up to the level of early efforts. I mean, that has happened to me several times over with quite a few authors, but South of Broad is probably the deepest, greatest descent from the heights of his best writing to the lows of the writing in this particular book. Many of you may enjoy this book a lot more than I did. I've seen plenty of positive reviews of this book out there, and the writing in it, particularly the descriptive writing of the setting of South Carolina may be something that draws you in. And if you like, stories where, something crazy is happening, every couple of pages, and there's plenty of characters to keep track of, and one just absurd thing after another takes place as these characters, spin out of control, barely managing to keep it together. If that sort of thing is to your liking, then perhaps you'll like this book a lot more than I did. But while I don't mind a book where there's a lot of crazy things happening to a lot of crazy people, I want to believe that these people are true human beings. Even though I know that I'm reading a story, I want them to feel as real to me as the people that I know in actual life. And I did not feel that way with the characters in South Abroad. I felt that they were just being created, each of them, to make some kind of point, some kind of commentary about the human condition in a not especially brilliant way. So that's all I have to say. This may be the most unpleasant review you'll find here at Roy's Book Reviews. Then again, there's still hopefully plenty of books out there for me to get to, and I may unfortunately get to a few others that I'm not crazy about. But with any luck, I will love them all. We shall see. Until next time, happy reading.